Hello, Miss Hawks class. My name is Taylor Bowie, and welcome to Crash Course World History. Today, we are going to learn about the French land claims in the New World from 1450 to 1750.
Hey, I'm Beth. I'm Soumya.
I'm Sophia.
And I'm Taylor. This is Brenna, and this is Emily.
After claiming land in North America and present-day Canada and the Great Lakes region, the French politics, economics, religion, and social interactions set it apart from the other colonizing European countries at the time. The contrasting, yet well-organized political structures of the French rule compared to the other countries, the economic trade that developed, the social engagements with the Indians, and the convergence France tried to create all played a role in the prosperity of the French in their North American territory known as New France. We're going to start with politics. According to some archaeologists, people had been living in Canada for about 10,000 years before the French even set foot into the New World. These native people had most likely crossed over the land bridge connecting Asia and North America. But with the start of European exploration in the 15th century, Canada would no longer be populated only by natives. In 1534, the first French explorer, Jacques Cartier, set foot in Canada. He set the path for future explorers, such as Samuel de Champlain and Sieur de Roberval, that led to the eventual colonization of Canada and of the Great Lakes region. Once the French had claimed New France, the King of France established a new governing system. This royal ruling system consisted of the sovereign council, appointed by the crown and headed by the governor, intendant, and the bishop. The governor was concerned with the military affairs of New France. The intendant was concerned with oversee administration in the colonies, and the bishop with establishing Catholicism in the new colony. He set the path for future explorers, such as Samuel de Champlain and Sieur de Roberval, that led to the eventual colonization of Canada and of the Great Lakes region. Once the French had claimed New France, the King of France established a new governing system. This royal ruling system consisted of the sovereign council, appointed by the crown and headed by the governor, intendant, and the bishop. The governor was concerned with the military affairs of France, the intendant was concerned with overseas administration in the colonies, and the bishop was establishing the Catholicism in the new colony. Although the ruling system established in New France differed in its structure, from the government in France, they were both similar in that the King of France was the head of both France and of New France. Compared to other colonizing countries, especially Spain. Although the ruling system established in France differed from its structure from the government in France, they both were similar in that the King of France was the head of both France and of New France. Compared to other colonizing countries, especially Spain, the French rule overall differed dramatically. The French treated the natives as partners in trade and almost equals, while the Spanish treated them like beasts of burden rather than human. They forced the natives into back-breaking work, but the French were against their forced enslavement and of work. Although the ruling system established in New France differed in its structure from the government in France, they were both similar in that the King of France was the head of both France and of New France. Compared to other colonizing countries, especially Spain, the French rule differed dramatically. The French treated the natives as partners in trade and almost equals, while the Spanish treated them like beasts of burden rather than humans. They forced the natives into back-breaking work, while the French were against their forced enslavement and work. Also, the Spanish were less organized in their establishment of power of their new lands, unlike the French, who established a neat political order in a new branch headed by the crown. New France's strong system of rule and prosperity in the New World helped establish it as an important power in America. Although France was prosperous, Britain also became a growing power in the New World. Soon, war erupted between the two countries in what is known as the French and the Indian War. In 1763, France lost most of its land claims in North America to the British in the Treaty of Paris, demolishing France's power in the New World. Now let's talk about economics. Although France now had a large new land claim in the New World, they had nothing to do with it and no people to occupy it. So, France began to offer assistance to any new settlers who volunteered to live in New France. The king provided seeds, farm animals, and estates for new French settlers in return for the settlement and their service. This would also result in a bigger farming base in the New World. Although the king believed that the incentives would draw people to New France, very few people actually stayed. After establishing the first permanent settlement in Quebec in 1608, the French still wanted a source of revenue to make them more wealthy and actually make a profit from their colonization. So around 1670, the French began fur trade with the Indians. They gave metal goods to the Indians in exchange for furs that were in high demand in Europe. Quebec became the first main trading post established in New France. As the fur trade grew, so did France's land in the New World. They began to move inland, where fur was abundant and the trade could flourish. In 1673, Father Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet arrived at the Mississippi River when seeking out more locations to establish fur trade. Only 9 years later, Sieur de la Salle claimed the Mississippi Valley for France. This finally allowed for the French to regulate their own fur trade on the Mississippi River, creating an even bigger pool of profit. The fur trade that the French established with the Indians was crucial to the prosperity of the New France, but their success did not last long. Not only was France prospering from fur at this time, but the British also had their fair share of victory from this economic asset. The French and the Indian War between the British and the French crushed France's economic prosperity in the New World. Now it's time for the secret compartment. What do we have today? It's wine! Wine has been made in France ever since the Roman Empire, and French cuisine is considered to be one of the best cuisines in the entire world, with an average of 2 cooking books being made every single day. There are also 300 different kinds of cheese that are made in France. Jesus Christ. Wow, I'd eat them all. Can't think of another good pun. Now I'm blue. That was a nice string, though. Okay, I'd better stop with these cheese puns before I get curd away.
Hardly who can say.
Next on the list is the social interactions. When the French first arrived in the New World and claimed their territory in Canada, they did not realize how crucial the natives would be to their success in the future. The interactions between the Indians and the French was very friendly and non-hostile, different from any other country that was colonizing in the New World before. Their peaceful encounters would in turn lead to a strong trust relationship established between the Indians and the French. When the French first arrived in North America, the Indians didn't know what to expect. Would the new arrivals be hostile killers like the Spanish were? Should they be scared, or should they be hopeful? There are a few official accounts about the first encounters between the Indian and the French, but most were positive and the complete opposite of the hatred the Spanish directed toward the natives in their land claims. To the Indians' relief, the French were open to a relationship that was friendly between the two groups. Instead of forcing the Indians into torturous labor like the Spaniards did, they engaged in peaceful trade. It's not exactly sure why the French were so nice to the Indians, or vice versa, but a major reason is probably because they saw the Indians as an economic asset. Without the Indians, there was no fur and there was no trade, and therefore no monetary profit. The Indians also tolerated the French because with such a small population living in New France, little land was actually taken from the Indians for the French settlers. So there was no need for hostilities to develop between the two groups. Overall, a lesson should be learned from the French that if you're nice to the Indians, they will most likely help you become super successful. The last section is religion. One main intention of France claiming land in the New World was to also spread religion to the native people. Roman Catholicism was the official religion of France, and the religion of most of the French people that came to settle in New France. The only people who were not allowed to settle in New France were the Huguenots. The Huguenots were a group of Protestants in France, formed after the Protestant Reformation. Because the majority of the new settlers would also be Catholics along with the head of France and of New France, the king wanted to expand Catholicism's sphere of influence into the new territories and spread his faith into the New World. That way, they could exert a sense of influence over the Indians and could communicate more easily. So, the king sent missionaries to New France to convert the natives to Catholicism. These missionaries were called Jesuits. In addition, the crown also sent Catholic priests known as Recollets, to aid in their missions. Although many other European countries used missionaries in their conversions of natives, the French were the most kind to the natives. For example, the French colonizers brutally forced the natives in their land to convert to Catholicism, while the French were more tolerant of the natives and of their lives. This kindness was rooted from the fact that the fur trade the French had depended on the natives. Although they didn't force the natives to convert to Catholicism, many of the Indians living in the French territory did, creating a strong bond and increased relations between the two groups. And now for the big picture conclusion.
Miss Bowie, is this going to be on the test?
Oh, me from the past. Of course it is. Alright. The French settlement in North America eventually led to conflict. Both the French and the British had claims to land in North America, but the French were continuously expanding. They felt as if France's expanding land was conflicting with the British colonies' land. It was the last straw for the British when France began to expand into the Ohio River Valley, and they refused to let them go farther. So, in 1754, war ensued in what became known as the French and the Indian War, or the 7 Years' War. Because of the French's hospitality towards the Indians, most of the Indian tribes sided with the French in the war. The beginning of the war played in France's favor, but in 1758, the French had their first defeat in Louisbourg, the turning point of the French and Indian War. 2 years later, in 1760, the fall of Montreal caused the overall fall of the French in the New World. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1763, ended the war and split France's land claims in North America between Spain and England. The British received Canada and Florida from Spain, and Spain received Louisiana. The French were permitted to keep the small land claims they had in the Caribbean. The war also hurt Britain. They went into a great debt that led to tensions that started the Revolutionary War. So what impact did the French leave on its land in Canada and the Great Lakes region? Although the French lost all their land in the war, their culture still has a profound effect on that region today. In Canada, around 7 million people speak French. Most of these French speakers live in Quebec, where French is the official language. In Quebec, 95% of the population speaks French and 80% are francophones, or primarily French speakers. Although the French presence in North America was diminished by the French and Indian War, the colonization by the French had a tremendous impact on Canada today culturally. Thank you very much for watching this crash course video made by Soumya, Beth Winslow, Sophia Kashishi, Brenna Bales, Emily Soyden, and yours truly, Taylor Bowie. Have a nice day.